suffering is good for you. Stupid words from stupid people. If anybody ever says that to you, shoot them in the knee. And if they scream and call you an asshole, they're full of shit because they would be thanking you if they believe suffering is good for them. The reason they don't thank you is because they're trying to make the excuse it's okay for them to cause suffering. It is not okay for you to cause them suffering. Okay? It only goes one way, and that's what they mean to say when they say that. Okay? Remember, these people pop LSD. They don't have to suffer. And the escape is LSD. Now, this was an interesting conversation because a bunch of the dudes that were from the Church of the Anal Eating Mummy that I was working with kept coming to me, and I was even talking to good old Anal Eating Mummy God, and he kept reading off this philosophy, and one of the things was, suffering is like the thing that makes you a man, like gives your life meaning. He was like, suffering gives your life meaning. That's nihilism. And then he was like, your morals are a cage. That's nihilism. And then he was like, basically, one of the guys I was working with, you need to look up who we're talking about. They're talking about Nietzsche, by the way. Nietzsche said, like, morals are like a cage that stops the overman from becoming his highest self. So basically, you throw your morals out, you become evil, and you behave like a dick, and then you're your highest self because you're pure fucking evil. Your morals are the things that separate you from being evil. Think Batman. Batman doesn't kill. If Batman threw his morals out and just started murdering people, he wouldn't be Batman. Okay? Anybody with half a brain can figure that out. This was kind of funny because I just kept saying nihilism, and they started getting mad because they believe Nietzsche was stalwart and completely against nihilism. No. If you look up all of Nietzsche's shit, it is literally all doublespeak. That's not a joke. These people are living nihilists, and I wanted to talk about the whole delicious human suffering and just the whole causes much misery. When I was president, I had to set up like an economic plan, and because I'm a socialist, I immediately were like, we're gonna fucking tax the rich, and we're gonna get healthcare for everybody, and we're gonna fund schools, and we're gonna quit creating emotionally stunted people, and we're gonna have a functioning society with intelligent people who are self-actualized and live a meaningful life. And then the wives tell me, suffering gives you a meaningful life. Not becoming a fully developed person and then pursuing your goals. No, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. And that's funny because there were a bunch of people at the church that made millions of dollars off of jobs I gave them, and I did that based off of their needs. Believing that if I met their needs, that they would turn into something special and then make more money, and then they could give the church more money. Stupid me. No, it actually worked. There's a bunch of people that I gave jobs to that are rich. They're cursed though, like the Haktua girl, how like she suddenly got in trouble for like laundering money. Like that's what happens when you don't pay it forward to the Bob. It goes bad for you. Once it gets really good is when it just suddenly goes bad for you. So these people are cursed, but for now they're going to be doing good. I mean, it's what happens when you don't have gratitude. Once again, gratitude crystals, you got to cash those in. These people cash in suffering crystals. They cause as much suffering as they can, and then the church awards them with a couple bucks. So, there's that. But the wives were like, the economic plan needs to be based on suffering. You have to cause misery, because when people are in pain, they can't function. I guess think Darth Vader. Darth Vader's robo-suit apparently caused him so much pain and misery that he couldn't think of a way to counteract the Sith Lord, whoever that guy is, Darth Sidious or whatever. And the delivery of suffering is to keep you distracted from uprising or thinking, because you're in constant pain. Which is what happens when you drink lead. Your brain's in constant pain, so you can't think. It makes you a violent, stupid person, and that's the whole goal of the church. And I remember when I put together my economic plan, they just started shooting down so much of it, and then telling me, like, Oh, well, and I remember jobs guaranteed through the government, like you enhance like employment programs, you refocus prisons on rehabilitation instead of just stuffing people in a box. And you need to think most of the people in prison with addiction problems are lead brains, and that was caused by the government, so they shouldn't be in there to begin with, but we don't live in a just society. So, yeah, and I mean, like, just recently the Church of the Anal Eating Mummy just lost its insurance, and then they threw out a bunch of legal cases. They hit them, recently, because if those people get their payouts from the church has to murder them, and I guess they're getting cold feet about the murder. I don't know why. They love murdering. It's a part of their thing. They're a death cult. They need to go start dealing death. It's what you guys do. It's in your fucking thing. Suffering's good. So you rape somebody, it's good for them. Emotionally stunted. You rape them and you get emotionally stunted. Let me read that off for you. Chronic self-absorbed, self-preoccupied behavior. They think of themselves first. Limited or complete lack of empathy, lack of guilt or remorse, disregard for your well-being, safety, and those you love. They do what feels best. They do not learn from past mistakes and continue to repeat behaviors that have negative consequences. Lack of self-reflection, inability to take your perspective, stand in your shoes. History of conflict or drama in relationship. History of denying reality due to effective realism. Reality is what it feels like versus what it is. History of distorting reality and making up new narratives and situations to deal with it. History of impulsive behaviors, more feeling than thinking, so they do what feels best. Enmeshment in relationships instead of emotional intimacy, may focus on physical things versus emotional. They do not do emotional work. They do not know how to repair relationships effectively. And spite brain, I always forget about that one. Spite brain just means you love human suffering. You have to stick it to them. And this is another contradictory, because these guys go, suffering's good for you. But if you were to hurt them, they would get back at you instead of thanking you, which tells you they're not thrilled about being hurt. They're not as masochistic as they pretend to be. The funny shit when I was doing the president thing, though, was I completed my ideal of like a perfect economic plan, which just involved restructuring taxes and fucking making sure poor people got their fair shot. And that wasn't okay, because in their system of suffering, you can create a narrow pool where white people win. And they let in a couple blacks so the blacks don't get depressed and give up. But they specifically had a thing about making sure white people won. And the whole reason the church pushes so much delicious human suffering and tells people it causes them misery, it's good for them, it's good for them. But then when you do it to the church, it's not okay. I call bullshit. Yeah, like I said, if somebody ever says that to you, blow off their legs. I will state this as a fact. Life is suffering. We're entropy. We're constantly being broken down. But life is also enjoyable. Life is beautiful. Okay? And part of that beauty is the imperfections in it. Now, these people don't understand that. They're just violent, stupid people, so you'll never explain that to them. They're too stupid to understand it. When we got into the thing about Nietzsche at my work, it was funny because I just kept telling them everything that guy says is nihilism. And it was funny because Nietzsche is hilarious because he has this long turnabout of how to say things, and that's doublespeak. Because it's not just like morality's bad. It's literally like morals are like fucking... They're slaves. Like, you're a slave to morals. That's what the problem is. You're a slave to morals. That's why you'll never have anything, because you do the moral thing and then you never win. And arguably, I have never won doing the right thing. So I guess to some extent that's true, but I argue that's because there just aren't enough good people. I think if there were enough good people, when you did the right thing, you wouldn't have to worry about being beat, raped, forced to have sex with babies, waterboarded, and fucking eat a corpse, have sex with a corpse, like every horrible thing that was done to me. I would argue that wouldn't happen because there'd be good people being like, no, okay, you're not killing him, he did the right thing, you don't get to kill him because you were in the wrong. And you look those fuckers in the face and you tell them, you were in the wrong, you're going to jail where you belong. Okay? You don't get to murder people for turning you in. You dumbass. Right? And remember these guys, and once again, you can win anything through murder. You can just shoot somebody and win. It's not special, it's not unique. And how fast these guys go murder. Like, it's just ridiculous. And I remember Ain't Elite and Mummy God had that conversation with me. Dude, I didn't even realize I talked to that guy so much until just recently. Holy shit, did I have conversations with that guy. I don't even know why he kept calling me. I remember this shit where Blondie was like, you're going to join the church because you lost to us? And I was like, no. And then he was like, you're going to do what I say? And I was like, no. And then he was like, argh! And then he came back and he was like, why won't you join the church? And I was like, because I don't let garbage in my life. And they was just, we're superior, you're garbage. Buddy, when you throw out your morals, you become a garbage human being. Okay, the difference between good and bad is morals. And I guess maybe Stu wears the name I gave him, Stu Amoral, as a badge, because they don't believe in morals at this church. And we got into this where Blondie was telling me if he makes a promise, or they don't believe in breaking their word, you don't have morals, you don't have principles, you're void of principles and morals. And I would even argue that it always happens with wealthy white people specifically. I've seen this thing where they're like, playing dirty's fine because they're inherently strong and everything is given to them. And they're strong because they get to eat all the good foods and they get to sleep good at night. I was a very weak kid because I was beaten and terrified when I went to bed every night and I didn't get to eat that much. So I was pretty fucking weak, but I was tough as shit, okay? Like, white people make up their problems. They're not real. And you should just keep making fun of them. That's the only way to deal with it, okay? Because they're going to cause misery. Once again, they believe delicious human suffering. You cause more suffering. And let me explain this about that. When things go bad, people turn to religion. When the government can't help them, when things seem hopeless, they're in a foxhole about to get blown the fuck up, they start praying to God. And that is the thing with the church. That is why they push human suffering, because the church members don't want it. But if they can deliberately put other people in human suffering, and this isn't a joke, one of the things the wives talked about was this expert, ingenious thing. Apparently in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a thing about suburbia, where people were moving to the suburbs because it made them feel safe. And when people feel safe, they don't go to religion. Fun fact. Yep. When you feel safe and you're secure, you stop going to church. And they didn't like that. So, John Walsh and Jean-Bonnet Ramsey was pushed. And they were people who lived in rich suburban areas. And they ran the news and people got terrified. And when they got terrified, they ran right back to church. And spoilers, those people were murdered and killed by the church. To terrify suburbia. And even the whole pushing of fear and fear and fear, you run right into church. And you go, save me. But then, here's the thing that's pushing that fear is the thing you just ran to. I would argue that's the work of the devil. And remember, once again, every church leader is both. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I swear I'm going to do it. The God brain. It's stupid. I did it once. I accidentally deleted it. Once again, they're both the devil and God. So they get the devil to use fear to scare you into the church. And then you're their slave. That's what happens. You don't win, you don't pass go, you do not collect $200, and remember, the highest proceedings at this church is you get to go out to the desert and do drugs until you dry up and turn into a beef jerky mummy, and then they sell you at the 7-Eleven down the street. Okay? That's your highest meaning in this church is drugs. You find out that the only way to escape suffering in life is drugs. But the reason why these people go, life is nothing but suffering, is actually a really sad one. It's the way they think. They cause misery, and in that aspect, they get misery, and then they just keep causing it. Okay? They just keep doing it, and then they go, this is fine because I'm miserable, so I make you miserable. And I'm going to make everybody miserable, and everybody's going to be miserable. Nobody's going to get to develop and self-actualize and move on with their lives and become something great. okay? We're going to make sure a limited amount of people do that, and they got to have the right skin tone. If they don't have the right skin tone, so help me fucking God, I'll fucking kill them. Like, none of you people get to self-actualize. That's a select group of whites. And I was just like, when that stuff was explained to me as president, the only thing that went through my brain was, I have been miserable my entire life, and you just told me it's by design. And I was like, so you guys believe that suffering gives life meaning, that you can't live a meaningful life if you just come together, work, and everybody develops, and everybody wins, and everybody adds their own miracles to the world, and we become a beautiful collage of humanity. And they were like, no, it has to be through suffering, and suffering limits the survivors, because only the strong survive. And I was like, the strong are always the rich. Well, yes, the strong are always the rich, but sometimes a really poor person gets in. They sometimes win. They live in the houses with asbestos, and they're exposed to shit that gives them cancer, but they sometimes win, and they get to be millionaires, and then they die of cancer before they can actually do anything. And I was like, are you guys fucking stupid? Well, anyways, yeah. So, this ridiculous philosophy, and they go, you push suffering. If you just give suffering, you get suffering. The reason why you guys are miserable is because you make everybody miserable, including yourselves. You self-immiserate, and then you go, there's some bank where you cash your suffering stones in at, okay? Take it from a guy that kind of believes in karma. I did one time, let me tell this story. It was pretty funny. I was talking to the blue-eyed guy because he came in and he thought he was going to take me in a philosophical debate with my fucked up metal brain that was slowly degrading and fucking all that shit. And he was like, suffering's good for you. It brings out it brings out who you really are, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, basically, I don't know why you don't put cigarettes out in your kids' eyes. And we had this back and forth, and like, holy shit, I just totally brain farted. That's embarrassing. That's why I should really write scripts. And I was like, so you, basically, I was like, you'll be okay with me just lighting you on fire, horribly mutilating you, because then you can cash your suffering crystals in. And then he was like, no, that would be horrible. And I was like, well, I cash my gratitude crystals in, and I shock Stu with lightning. And he's, what? Do gratitude. You'll be striking people with lightning if you're like me, if you're an actual good person. And he was, what's suffering done for you? And it's made me a man. And I just started laughing, and I was just like, suffering causes emotionally stunted. That's the opposite of being a man, by the way. That's why I was laughing, blue-eyed guy. That's why you're funny. That's why I think you're cute. Is there anything left to say? You know what? I'm just leaving it on that note. Yeah, suffering causes emotionally stunted. You're not a man, you're a child. That's how that works. And gratitude brings joy in the world. And there's no bank to cash your suffering crystals in at. Nobody's going to give you money for it, trust me. I literally went through the worst things you could do to a human being. I didn't get a fucking dollar. Okay? And I'm not gonna, by the way. If suffering actually meant something, I'd be a gazillionaire. Taddy, bye.